All right. Hi, my name is Doreen and I am president of eRichards Consulting, an IT and professional staffing and recruiting firm in Connecticut. Today, I have the honor of speaking with Ashby Dodge, who is a clinical licensed social worker. Ashby is currently the director of operations for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline in New York City. And prior to that, she was the chief clinical officer at the Trevor Project, which I'm sure many of you know is the nation's leading organization providing crisis intervention and suicide prevention for LGBTQ youth. Today, Ashby and I thought it would be a good idea if we could address some of the stress and concerns that all of us have globally and nationally and in our own homes about this pandemic that we are going through. And I wanted to ask you, Ashby, about if you could sort of address the top 3 issues that you find people are struggling with today.
Sure, absolutely. I think, it's such an unprecedented time, really, in most of our lives, and it's something where it's causing everyone to have to kind of dig deep and kind of address their own humanity. Really, I mean, it doesn't matter what line of work you're in. It doesn't matter, what your situation is. Everyone's affected by this in some way or another. And in my work, in my practice, as well as in suicide prevention, I'm seeing 3 things come up that I wanted to address today. And those 3 things are uncertainty, the uncertainty of the entire situation, job loss and grief, and isolation. So those 3 things are 3 things I wanted to kind of bring up today. And I think that the uncertainty piece is really, it's not really recognized very much because it seems so simple. Oh, it's just uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how this will end. We don't know how we'll recover. But really, when you're facing uncertainty, you're dealing with a type of vulnerability. And when we're confronted with that, we usually try to escape it in whatever way we can. And for folks, different people can try to escape it in different ways. And I think sometimes this kind of isolation and quarantine can exacerbate kind of issues that are already there. So we try to escape it. But there is a way to try to live through it and even to thrive. And I do a lot of work and look at a lot of research and philosophy by Brene Brown, Dr. Brene Brown, who's a shame and resilience and vulnerability researcher. And, really the way to work with that is instilling faith and self-trust. So we want to not look at too much of advice from maybe unreliable media or rumor mills or anything like that. And we really want to look at how do we really instill and look at the self-trust, because there are no guarantees. But the self-trust is believing whatever happens through this, I'll find a way through it. I'll find a way to make it through. And that's the piece that folks who are really thriving in this kind of uncertainty are accessing for themselves. How will whatever happens, I will make it through this. So that's the uncertainty piece. I don't know if you want to, go into the job loss and isolation, but do you have any, does this uncertainty ring true for you?
I think for me, that's kind of where I can get caught up, especially if I start to future trip about it. If I start thinking about, okay, well, what's September going to look like? And then what's going to happen when we have the second round? And what about this? And what about that? And, in terms of my adult offspring and all these different things and loved ones and my business and friends and, people that I deeply, deeply care about, and as a entrepreneur, I show up every day and have for 20 years for my business, and I want to be a leader inside of this time. And so that's partly why we decided to do this, because we want to help people through this.
Hmm.
Our tagline is bringing humanity to technology. And 20 years ago, when we created that, people would say, what do you mean by that? And then
Hmm.
in the last 5 years, not so much. People weren't asking. And now there's
Right.
no doubt. For me,
Right.
now it's come full circle where this is a time for humanity for each and every one of us. So I really liked what you said about digging deep and finding humanity, our own humanity.
Right.
And what I remind myself of is to share that humanity with myself first.
Right.
And then I can be kinder and I can be more patient and more resilient with others. But I need to feed myself that first.
Right. Right. And what's interesting is when I'm talking about this in my field or with other professionals, it's so interesting because it really doesn't matter who you are. And so I've found, when people are asking me, oh, as a clinician, or oh, as operations for the Lifeline, or anything like that, what are you seeing? How are we getting through this? And it feels so funny to be giving advice or offering solutions when I'm kind of like, wow, what's going to happen? What's going on? How is my family going to survive? All of these things. And it doesn't matter who you are, because everyone is going through some piece of this. So it's making for a lot of innovation, though, and creativity in how we love, in how we parent, in how we work, in the kind of allowances we make for other people, the kind of compassion that's coming out of our community. So it's not only a devastating and scary time, but it is also a time for rebirth and renewal. And so hopefully, I mean, that's my greatest hope, is that we could get to that place eventually, once going through all this, to kind of see, okay, where are we going now? How can we be our best selves going forward? And that's all we can do. That's literally all we can do.
That brings to mind for me what is so fascinating. One of the things that's so fascinating that's coming out of this is how, in such a short time, the earth is healing, the planet is healing. And
Yeah.
I thought, oh my God, decades of devastation and abuse. And in months, in weeks, just a few short weeks, which seems like a few years, but the planet is healing. I mean, you look at pictures of, all around the world, from France, from Venice, from India, from LA, and you
Mm-hmm.
see, oh my gosh, and one of the things I'm experiencing is, for many years living here in Connecticut, because I'm born and raised in New York, I moved here and I think I never see anybody. I don't see people in their yards. I don't see people walking. Occasionally you
Mm-hmm.
see runners or bicyclists, occasionally on a beautiful, perfect day. But now I go for a walk and I see 10, 15, 20 people. I see children, parents with their kids all in tow on bikes. And I see, couples walking. I see families walking. And I'm like, this is what a part of me has been longing for. So when you
Yeah.
talk about rebirth, the
Yeah.
planet's rebirthing, people are rebirthing, and
Yeah.
my daughter was telling me that she was taking an online class, one of her college classes, and the professor was speaking, and all of a sudden his little 2-year-old popped up in his lap. And
Yes.
he said, I'm sorry, but no, not really, he's adorable. And I
Yeah.
thought, humanity, I
Yeah.
used to be so afraid as a working mom with 3 little kids, and working from my home office, that if someone heard my child in the background, they would think less of me, or they would think I wasn't really a hard worker, and
Right.
I'd be shushing them and shooing them. And now I hear children in the background and it's like, oh, that feels nice. It feels
It does. It kind of
human.
brings everyone to a certain baseline, a certain level where, like, it's not a secret. We all know we're at home. So if people have kids, if people have pets, if people have spouses and partners, they're all going to be there. So it's a fun time to kind of accept that and know that we can still be super efficient and amazing at our work, even though they're all there.
Yeah, and it's a new normal, and I think that's part of the uncertainty, is what is the new normal going to look like? And for me, there's a little bit of fear about, I don't want that new normal to be bringing back all that stuff I was
Right.
dragging around, and all that pollution that we were choking down and, leaving to the next generations. I don't want that to be the new normal, and that causes me a little bit of stress too. like, oh my gosh, when we gear up again, are we going to just go back and forget?
Well, and I would hope we wouldn't as a general people, but it's up to each and every one of us to bring back, to really think about it deeply and decide, what do I want to bring back to my life, to my daily life, to my family life that I had before, and ideally bring the things intentionally back in
Mhm.
that are healthy and good and rejuvenating and rewarding for you and for our planet and for our neighborhoods and children, versus just allowing everything back to normal. I don't know that there will be a back to normal, even if we had tried to put it back the way it was, which is kind of good. Um, but yeah, I think we all have to decide what we want to bring.
Yeah, I feel like we're in a big timeout, a
Yeah,
global
huge one,
timeout.
huge one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like Mother Nature just said, done. You're all just bad, you know?
you're in
But
timeout. Yes.
going back to what you were starting out initially with your three, the struggles, the
Yeah.
joblessness and the grief. Can you
Yeah.
talk about that?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of folks responding all across the board about just a lot of loss, whether it be job loss, economy, loss of finances, um, grief around people passing away, and losing people that we love. And so I think that loss gets compounded. It happens over and over again for people, and that's the kind of thing that I want to make sure that we're all aware of as this continues on, because those kind of things build off of each other, and that's where folks could have some struggles with mental health issues. So that, along with the third thing that I was bringing up, which was isolation, that's a tough one anyway. I mean, and obviously I work in suicide prevention, so really making sure that folks, while we're physically distancing, and physical distancing in and of itself does not increase suicidality, we want to make sure that we're not completely isolating ourselves. So reaching out to those we love, getting support from friends or coworkers or therapists or anyone that you feel is right for you. That's really important right now, because that grief, that job loss, joblessness, that's happening across the board is really traumatic and impactful, and that's on top of just the regular trauma of this pandemic in and of itself, which can kind of bring about some of those almost PTSD responses. So in some of us. So uh, I think it's good to be aware that this is happening for a lot of people, and that changes people's lives. And so knowing where to go for help, knowing where to get resources, and knowing who to reach out to is a big deal right now.
Yes, I know. And as a recruiter, I have speak to candidates every day who are looking for work, who are waiting to start,
Right.
who are, and that's been postponed.
Right.
Having a daughter myself who's coming out of college, graduating with such a successful career as as a student, and now so much of what she had going has been canceled, is on
Right.
hold, has been defunded, and so that uncertainty for her, and yet knowing that, because I have been around for a while, that we will come out of this, and we will come out, as that old saying goes, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So knock
Mhm.
wood, we will come out of it healthy and well, and it will make us wiser, it will make us stronger, it will make us more resilient, it will
Mhm.
show us, I believe, hopefully, what our priorities are, and help us keep
Yeah.
those in check, you know
Yeah.
but I do feel for many of the candidates that I speak with who are looking, who have been furloughed, who
Hmm.
have families that they need to take care of. And I do believe that listening is sometimes all I can offer. And
Yeah.
and then some suggestions about, okay, what to do with your resume and how to connect with people via this
Sure.
tool and that social media tool, and stay in touch with me. And because when we come out of this, there will be opportunity. I do believe that.
Absolutely. I think too, something that I have noticed professionally could be of use is that a lot of times, the folks that are working, a lot of us are working from home or from remote places, and having folks are taking on a lot of stress because of the fact that they're working all day long on the computer at home in their space, and then don't have really a break in between that life, their work life or that stress, and then their family life or home life. And it's come up a lot where people might, work all day, super stressed, and then immediately 5 o'clock, boom, you're pouring drinks and ready to de-stress, but it's getting to be excessive. So maybe incorporating things like a walk at 5, after you're done with work, before you enter into your dinner time routine or whatever. Or, maybe you do a 10-minute meditation, or maybe you do yoga or take a run, or, something like that, to really split up that work life moment and stress from your home life so you can decompress. Because a lot of people have commutes to do that, or,
Mhm.
traveling between work and home, or all these things that we do that we really kind of take for granted in between the stress of work and our home life. So I think that that's also something important to keep in mind, is what do I incorporate, what kind of supports and timeouts, good timeouts, or meditations or things like that, exercise, can I incorporate into my daily life that I didn't have before necessarily because I didn't have to, but now, because of the setup and because of how we're doing things, I do have to, in order to maintain my own mental health. So that's coming up a lot too. And those are just like little things that you can implement just to make yourself feel better and de-stress a
Yeah.
little during this time.
When you touched on grief before, that sadly it's touched our family in that someone who's very dear to me, her uncle passed, and they did test him for COVID-19, and it wasn't. He just had a heart attack, and he's a young, vital man, and he passed. And the grief is that, well, they lost him, but also that they can't mourn him.
Right.
They can't come together as a family, as friends, as a community, and mourn him. And are you dealing with that at all in your practice, or at the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline?
Yeah, I mean, that's yet another kind of thing about not having the closure, not being able to go through the grief process as we normally would. Our reactions to these things are normal reactions to extraordinary circumstances right now. And so not being able to find that closure and to celebrate that life in the way you wanted to, or things like that, that is hard for people, because it keeps people in sometimes a bit of limbo unless they find a way to find that closure. A lot of people might postpone weddings or parties or funerals or things so that they can have that celebration of life in whatever way they'd like. But yeah, right now we can't do it. And again, that brings us back to that isolation that's really hard when people are dying in the hospitals in New York, everywhere, and they can't have their loved ones with them. I mean, that's excruciating. That's horrible to imagine, and yet it's happening. So I think folks are doing the best they can to try to get people on FaceTime, and the medical and nursing staff and all of those folks are just going way above and beyond to make sure that they can aid these people in this time of grief and hardship. So I think it is hard, and I don't know that there's one answer of how do you get through it. I think of course we are seeing it though, and it just is a kind of a wrench in the process of how we're used to doing things and dealing with death.
Yeah, I think some of what you were saying before about creating those bridges for ourselves, where we exercise, we meditate, we do yoga, we spend a half hour on the phone with a friend or a loved one or a group of friends and loved ones. I've been finding that to be helpful. And
Yeah,
I've also been checking in on people, and I don't want to be annoying. I don't want to, insert myself into someone's day if that's not really what they want. Because sometimes I don't feel like talking to anybody. So
sure.
if you call somebody and they don't feel like talking, well, they have the option not to pick up. But I'm trying to be sensitive to reaching out and not imposing myself upon people.
Yeah, absolutely. I and I think that, everybody's different. So you'll kind of find what's best for you. What do you find that you need? What do you find that your loved ones need? I think also you're making me think of things as you talk, but like limiting your intake of social media or media in general.
Hmm. Hmm.
The news. Sometimes you have to turn the channel because it's constant. It's 24/7 of this pandemic and this hardship in one way or another. And so, you know, folks digest that in different ways and process that in different ways. And so if that may not be healthy for you all the time, or, so I think that that's another thing to be intentional about.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great suggestion. And I have found that once the initial lockdown happened, that was it for me. I turned off the media. Just the visuals of it was too much for me. And then what they were delivering, and then the crawl
Yeah.
on the bottom, and then the numbers up on the top. And it was just like, I cannot handle this. So I had to set limits for my own health and well
Mhm.
being. And if I walk into a room and it's on, I walk out of the room because,
Right.
or I demand that it gets turned off. But no, I'm getting better. I'm walking out of the room because, we all have to cohabitate. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
one person may want to watch that and get caught up, and I can't. So I extract myself. And I think even within our home, we're three of us, but there are times when I need to be alone, you
Sure.
know? And
Mhm.
so I'm lucky that I'm not isolated. I do have friends who are living alone in their own apartments, working alone all day, and, don't really, other than Zoom, see other people. And I know that that's tricky for them. And,
Mhm.
for me, I have to find that balance of, okay, I do have other people, and yet I need some alone time for
Sure.
my mental health.
Yep. And that's
So,
taking that space that you need, that mental space, that physical space. That's really looking at what do I need to get through this right now, and also not judging yourself for that.
yeah.
So, everybody's talking about how evolved they can be and all the deep things we can learn as we kind of touched on earlier during this time. However, this is also a really hard time. And so for folks not to be hard on themselves and judge themselves about, or others about how you're processing this, or how you're handling this quarantine. You do the best you can. You be as healthy as you can. You take care of yourself and loved ones the best you can, and that's really all you can do.
Yeah.
um, you need to take that time if you feel like you need it.
Yeah. And so I know we were going to touch a little bit about resources and techniques, and I think we
Yep.
did touch on strategies,
Yep.
but I know you have a couple of suggestions for people who might want to check them out.
Yeah. So, just a couple of the things I mentioned. Obviously, if you're concerned about COVID or any sort of health issues, you would want to go to the CDC website. If there are resources that you need for yourself or loved ones, in terms of suicidality or suicidal behavior or any kind of mental health crisis, you could go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org, and we can put these up for folks afterwards, so or I can pass them on to you so that you can get them. Something that I find that's super helpful is on Instagram. There's this great page called Self Care is for Everyone, and
Mm.
daily, it's like little stories and little anecdotes and quotes and stuff, and it's so cute. It's a great organization, and so I find that that's really helpful to have on Instagram. If you have an Instagram account, it's fun to follow. Self Care is for Everyone. And then I was talking about Brene Brown earlier. She's got some great podcasts right now, and obviously amazing books. She's pretty well known, and many of you might have her books, but you can go to her website and see she's got a good podcast series happening right now that's really interesting and feeds the soul. So those three things I think are good places to start.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we'll be
Yeah,
sure to include those, as well as including a way in which, if people want to reach out to you,
sure.
if you can send that over to me, so your preferred way, I'll make sure that
Absolutely.
we include that as well.
Great. All right. Well, thank
Okay.
you so much. It's been awesome to be here and have this conversation, and I look forward to others down the road.
Yes, I hope so. I'm planning on that. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your time with us today.
Absolutely.
Okay. Bye, Ashby.
Bye bye.